Kirk is demanding a speedy trial in the case against her husband's accused killer, Tyler Robinson, after she claims his defense team is delaying proceedings.
Forgive him.
You murdered my husband. I have to tell my daughter every day and explain to her why daddy's not coming home.
Something in this case didn't just shift, it detonated. Timelines are tightening, pressure is mounting, and online voices are growing louder by the hour, asking a single question: are we seeing the full story, or merely the version being carefully presented to us? The defense continues extending proceedings day after day, and some observers argue it's beginning to feel less like routine legal pacing and more like a calculated battle over timing. Then came the development few anticipated. A resurfaced clip began circulating online showing Erika Kirk and her mother, Lori, appearing to celebrate alongside a man many viewers believe bears a striking resemblance to Tyler Robinson. The individual publicly accused in connection with Charlie Kirk's death. Once that footage reached social media, everything intensified. The discussion didn't simply expand, it erupted. Shortly after the video gained traction, Erika filed paperwork urging a speedy trial in Tyler's case. That decision drew attention, particularly given her earlier public expression of forgiveness. Now the question circulating is straightforward. What changed, and why, as several commentators note, has there been no visible progress regarding the financial audit of TPUSA that Charlie reportedly sought? Legal analysts have emphasized that under Utah law and the U.S. Constitution, the right to a speedy trial belongs to the defendant. It functions as a safeguard for the accused. Because of that, Erika's request for acceleration has sparked renewed debate, with observers questioning the underlying objective. Some interpret the urgency as an attempt to close the chapter swiftly and steady the broader narrative. Others view it as frustration over delays. Regardless, the timing, paired with the resurfaced footage, has drawn heightened scrutiny. If the man in that celebration clip is Tyler Robinson, many want to understand how such a connection would have existed years earlier. If it isn't him, then who is it? Online speculation has intensified as viewers attempt to reconcile the timeline. The clip appears to show New Year's 2018. Tyler Robinson was born in 2003, which would have made him 15 at the time. That fact alone has fueled discussion. While resemblance does not equal proof, many question whether it could realistically be him at all. One thing remains certain: the questions aren't fading, they're multiplying. Some online users now propose that the individual in the resurfaced clip may actually be Erika's former partner, Ben Cabot Phillips, a possibility that adds another layer to an already complex narrative. At the same time, a growing number of viewers are questioning whether Tyler fully fits the role he's been assigned. How did he become central to the case? Were there prior connections to Erika's circle or TPUSA that haven't been publicly clarified? Others strongly dispute that suggestion, arguing there is no verified evidence of concealed links. The divide remains sharp and appears to be widening. Another piece of footage reignited discussion. A 2022 body cam clip involving Tyler began circulating again. In it, he appears awkward, visibly uncertain, even nervous. For many observers, that demeanor doesn't align with the calculated image implied in courtroom framing. Rather than composed or strategic, he comes across as inexperienced, possibly impressionable. Online analyses have gone frame by frame. Hesitant speech, tense posture, shifting eyes, moments where he seems overwhelmed while interacting with authority figures.
This driver! You're the driver?
Yeah.
Robinson. Can you tell me just really quick what happened?
I was coming this way and he's just passing through and he rolled out from here, or no, from there, I think.
Do you remember which lane you were in?
I was in one of those two lanes going this way. I think in the right, yeah, in the rightmost lane coming this way.
Some commentators suggest he appears socially uncomfortable rather than strategically driven. That perceived contrast has become a significant talking point. What continues to drive the debate is the gap between the body cam portrayal of Tyler and the more deliberate image described publicly. One behavioral analyst who weighed in suggested that based solely on the footage, Tyler appears highly impressionable, particularly around dominant personalities he may view as authority figures. That assessment further intensified speculation. Those who share that interpretation describe the contrast as striking, almost like two separate portrayals of the same individual. In the clip, he struggles to maintain composure during what appears to be a relatively minor interaction. Others argue the discrepancy feels dramatic. Of course, demeanor alone does not determine legal responsibility. But in the court of public opinion, perception carries influence. And this divergence has become one of the most discussed aspects of the case so far. Then there's Erika's shift in tone. Shortly after the incident, she publicly stated, "That man, that young man, I forgive him." Now she is advocating for a speedy trial and openly criticizing the defense for delays. That change has not gone unnoticed.
Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do. That man, that young man, I forgive him.
Online voices are questioning what prompted such a noticeable pivot. Observers continue focusing on that shift. Initially, forgiveness dominated the narrative. Now the tone feels firmer, more assertive. Some interpret that as natural progression toward accountability and closure. Others view the contrast between earlier remarks and the current legal stance as intentional. The timing, many suggest, is difficult to overlook. Attention then turned to the attorney Erika retained, Jeffrey Neiman. His prior representation of Alex Acosta, the former prosecutor associated with the controversial Jeffrey Epstein plea deal, immediately drew reaction online. A lawyer's past clients do not automatically define future cases, yet many commentators argue that optics matter, particularly in situations already under intense examination. The reaction was immediate. Some questioned why someone emphasizing transparency would engage counsel known for handling high-profile, contentious matters. Others responded that complex legal cases require experienced attorneys. Regardless, the association added momentum to an already heated conversation.
The devastating loss of Charlie Kirk, my incredible husband at UVU, Caleb has persisted with the same grit. It has been a long day. Trust me, you're not a grifter, honey. It's all good.
Financial questions soon followed. High-level legal representation carries substantial cost, and observers are asking how those expenses are being covered. Personal funds, organizational resources, private donors. There is no public evidence of misconduct. However, limited clarity often invites speculation, and scrutiny appears to be expanding rather than easing. Much of this remains within the realm of public discussion, yet the volume of questions continues to grow. Then came a development that generated some of the strongest reactions yet: Erika's motion advocating for a speedy trial. Legal commentators have pointed out that the constitutional right to a speedy trial traditionally belongs to the defendant. It is designed to protect the accused. That technical detail has led many to question the practical effect her filing is intended to achieve. So what is the strategy? Some interpret it as a desire to move forward and secure closure. Others suggest that timing can influence perception just as much as courtroom arguments, especially in high-profile cases where narrative evolves quickly. Accelerated proceedings can also compress preparation windows. Legal analysts frequently note that tighter timelines may limit how thoroughly defense teams review discovery, consult experts, and examine alternative interpretations of evidence. Prosecutors, who often build cases over months before charges are filed, may appear comparatively positioned when schedules advance. That imbalance, whether real or perceived, has become another flashpoint in an already charged discussion. There is another dimension to the timing debate. Extended timelines do more than delay outcomes. They create space. Space for additional documents to emerge. Space for independent journalists to investigate further. Space for new voices to step forward. In high-profile cases, scrutiny tends to intensify rather than fade over time. This does not automatically imply wrongdoing. However, it explains why timing has become such a focal point. In cases like this, time is not merely procedural. It shapes investigative depth, media framing, and ultimately public understanding. At present, that clock sits at the center of the conversation. Many observers note that as cases extend, pressure increases. reporters revisit filings, independent researchers analyze financial statements more closely, patterns receive renewed attention. In this situation, some online voices believe a prolonged timeline could sharpen focus not only on the criminal proceedings, but also on broader governance questions surrounding TPUSA, particularly as calls for a financial audit grow louder, something Charlie had reportedly expressed interest in before his death. For some, that overlap in timing raises concern.
My name is Joshua Peterson. I worked for Turning Point USA and Turning Point USA Faith, and I knew Charlie Kirk personally. I want to say on the record that there was a inner circle at Turning Point USA that was constantly working against Charlie and his interests and what he wanted to do, as well as there was a Jewish influence in Turning Point that he was not very fond of, that he wanted to get rid of. He tried doing this, he tried creating a Doge department, and he gets assassinated. Another thing that makes me believe this inner circle was constantly working against Charlie was because of the fact that he had a whole entire branch of Turning Point that he had no idea about, and that was the stock market branch. Now, the thing about this branch is it's been getting millions of dollars poured into it over the past 4 years now, and that's been seen through their latest tax returns. This stock market group that Turning Point has been throwing millions of dollars into the stock market for the past 4 years now, and Charlie Kirk had no knowledge of that whatsoever. Now, if you also look into it a little bit deeper, if you look at the staff on that branch specifically, it says zero. It says there's nobody employed in that branch, yet they're pouring $5 million into funds for employees. Make it make sense. That sounds like money laundering to me. It sounds like there's some pyramid scheme going on behind the scenes at Turning Point that Charlie did not know about originally, and I think that he was planning to expose that, and that's ultimately what got...
Independent financial commentators have already begun examining publicly available filings tied to the organization. One online researcher, known as Zeus the Parable, released a breakdown that gained notable traction. Based on reported figures, he contends that a significant portion of revenue appears allocated toward internal salaries and major event production. According to the figures circulating, out of roughly $8.5 million in reported revenue during one period, approximately $5.2 million reportedly went toward salaries, with an estimated $2.5 million allocated to conferences and large-scale events. Some describe that as standard operational structure for a national political organization. Others question whether that allocation reflects mission-driven priorities or internal expansion. When viewed as percentages, some analysts suggest more than half of incoming funds appear tied to payroll, with another substantial share supporting high-visibility conferences aimed at branding and outreach. Whether this reflects strategic growth or disproportionate internal spending depends largely on interpretation. Yet the figures themselves have become central to the debate. None of these numbers alone establish misconduct. However, they have intensified calls for transparency. For many observers, a comprehensive audit would either clarify concerns or deepen them. Another figure circulating online indicates that roughly 29 cents of every dollar may be directed toward events. Some frame those gatherings as outreach platforms designed to energize supporters and expand influence. Others argue they function primarily as promotional showcases for the organization itself. When combined with payroll expenditures, some analysts suggest only a smaller portion of total revenue appears to reach clearly defined programmatic initiatives, though accounting classifications can vary. And that is why timing continues to matter. As long as questions persist, scrutiny does not cool, it builds. All of this brings the conversation back to a broader question. What measurable impact is TPUSA generating relative to its financial scale? Some argue the organization is cultivating youth engagement and building long-term political infrastructure. Others contend that the financial structure appears more internally concentrated than movement-focused. The disagreement is not about the numbers existing, it is about what they signify. Executive compensation has also drawn attention. Public filings indicate several senior figures reportedly earning between $200,000 and $400,000 annually. For some, that aligns with leadership compensation at large national nonprofits. For others, compensation at that level invites examination, particularly alongside high production events and aggressive branding initiatives. Hiring patterns have surfaced as another point of discussion. Online commentary has highlighted individuals with personal or long-standing connections occupying influential roles. Some interpret that as trust within a rapidly growing organization. Others argue that tightly connected networks can limit independent oversight. The facts are public. The interpretation remains contested. At this point, much of the conversation remains interpretive rather than definitive. The filings are accessible. Their meaning continues to be debated. Another moment resurfaced. A clip from AmFest where Erika appeared to misspeak during a public appearance. At the time, many viewers dismissed it as an awkward phrasing. In light of the expanding financial discussion, critics now argue the moment may have unintentionally revealed more about internal decision-making than intended. Others maintain it was simply a harmless verbal stumble. What has shifted is not the clip itself, but the context surrounding it. As more individuals review Form 990 filings and budget allocations, that brief exchange is being reassessed through a more analytical lens. Some describe the organization as tightly controlled by a smaller leadership circle. Others respond that centralized authority is common in founder-led entities. Meanwhile, Zeus the Parable released another financial breakdown based on publicly available filings. According to those reports, approximately $63 million of the organization's assets were invested in securities at one point, representing a significant portion of total holdings. A subsequent filing reportedly lists around $69 million in total assets, suggesting continued financial growth. These figures alone do not confirm wrongdoing. However, they amplify the central tension: growth, oversight, optics, and timing converging simultaneously. And as the totals increase, so do the questions. For some observers, the investment-heavy structure raises a deeper philosophical issue. What does it signal when a grassroots political organization allocates a substantial share of its assets to market-based securities rather than directly funding activism, expansion, or ground-level initiatives? Some argue that investing reserves is prudent nonprofit strategy, a way to safeguard longevity and ensure stability. Others contend it projects an image more aligned with capital preservation than grassroots momentum. The filings are public record. The friction arises in interpretation, yet the scale of investment totals has undeniably altered the tone of the discussion. This leads to further inquiry. Who oversees these investments? Who determines how tens of millions in assets are distributed? And when those securities appreciate, where does that value ultimately accrue? Large nonprofits typically rely on financial advisors, boards, and structured governance. Still, some maintain that only an independent audit would provide comprehensive clarity regarding control and oversight. Then the debate intensified once again. An individual described as a former TPUSA insider publicly shared assertions about the organization's financial structure, stating that the investment-focused approach was intentional and long-standing. These claims have not been independently verified in full. Nevertheless, some observers argue that elements of the account align with publicly available filings, keeping the discussion active. The same source alleged that Charlie had begun raising internal concerns regarding expense allocations and whether revenue growth translated into measurable organizational expansion. These remain allegations, but they have circulated widely and fueled additional transparency demands. The insider further described what they characterized as a division between public-facing leadership and those managing financial decisions behind the scenes. Some view that as standard role distribution within executive teams. Others suggest such separation, if accurate, could create oversight gaps. Another assertion indicates that in the months preceding the incident, Charlie sought more detailed documentation and clearer explanations regarding specific expenditures. He was allegedly informed that the reporting was complex and required professional interpretation. Some interpret that as typical for organizations handling significant assets. Others view it as highlighting the need for clearer internal transparency. According to this account, when Charlie pursued greater clarity, he was encouraged to concentrate on public appearances, events, and movement building, while a smaller internal group handled financial strategy. To some, that reflects ordinary delegation. To others, it signals concentrated control. At this stage, these claims remain part of ongoing public discourse rather than established fact. However, combined with asset growth, investment allocations, and renewed audit calls, they reinforce a central theme. The louder the financial figures become, the sharper the questions grow. Perhaps the most significant allegation is that Charlie may not have had full visibility into certain financial decisions. As president of TPUSA, many assume he would have possessed at least general awareness of how tens of millions in assets were managed. Whether limited access, structured delegation, or compartmentalization played a role remains uncertain. Here, interpretations diverge. One view suggests that key financial decisions were concentrated within a smaller leadership circle, potentially limiting broader executive oversight. Another proposes that Charlie was informed but entrusted financial execution to professionals. Without definitive documentation or sworn clarification, both possibilities remain speculative. If substantial asset decisions occurred without wide executive transparency, governance concerns naturally follow. Conversely, complex organizations often rely on specialized financial teams to manage portfolios. In that interpretation, delegation reflects operational structure rather than secrecy. If Charlie was fully aligned with the strategy, the narrative shifts entirely, implying coordinated leadership rather than separation. For now, the public weighs competing portrayals. Some believe expanding financial scrutiny may shed light on the urgency surrounding the speedy trial request. As long as the criminal case remains active, attention extends beyond the courtroom into governance and financial oversight. Others reject that connection, maintaining that resolution is about justice, not optics. Motive remains a matter of perspective. Discussion has increasingly centered on TPUSA itself, asset distribution, donor transparency, structural oversight. With Erika now occupying a leadership role, observers note both legal and reputational pressures. Some view her actions as stabilizing the organization during crisis. Others caution that sustained scrutiny could affect donor confidence and long-term funding. There are also claims circulating that donor enthusiasm has cooled, while others maintain support remains steady. Without updated, verified donation data, these assertions remain anecdotal. Still, perception alone can influence momentum, and at present, perception is sharply divided. Even among those uncertain about Tyler Robinson's precise role, many agree on one point: unanswered questions persist. Observers reference timeline inconsistencies, incomplete documentation, and gaps in publicly available information. Some emphasize that investigations require time and not all details can be disclosed immediately. Others argue that greater transparency would reduce speculation rather than fuel it. At this juncture, two parallel narratives continue unfolding. One centers on procedural justice and the legal process. The other focuses on governance, financial clarity, and internal oversight. Until definitive evidence emerges, both tracks will continue advancing and intersecting in public view. What remains undeniable is this: the story is not fading. Public attention continues to grow, the questions keep multiplying, and scrutiny shows no signs of slowing. This conversation is far from over,